भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीर्मुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवती नैष्टिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकीनन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरोन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजाता सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तां सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदां सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्त काञ्चन गौरांग राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। So I'll recite a verse in glorification of Srila Jiva Goswami. This verse is composed by Hare Krishna Acharya. Hastamalakavattattvam Srimad Bhagavatasya ya Darshayamasa Jivebhyas Tam Shri Jiva Prabhum Bhaje. So I offer my obeisances to that Jiva Goswami who taught all the tattvas of Srimad Bhagavatam like Amalaki on the hand. Hastamalaka Vattattvam Srimad Bhagavatasya. So again I welcome all the devotees for this Sri Bhagavat Sandarbha class. We are definitely require the blessings of the Acharyas and all the Vaishnavas because it's a huge book. Tattva Sandarbha itself, Tattva Sandarbha is the smallest of the out of the 6 Sandarbhas. That itself, it took around 45 sessions. But Bhagavad Sandarbha is, Tattva Sandarbha has got only 63 Anuchedas, but in Bhagavad Sandarbha has got something like 100 Anuchedas. So it's also more involved. So it is just a small attempt Definitely, I don't see myself qualified to speak on this, but I see this as an opportunity for my own purification and also as a small service to the Guru Parampara and also to the devotees. We are going to go through the every verse that was in the Bhagavad Sandarbha, and we'll read the translation and we'll go through the different meanings of that. But in this introductory class, we will have a short introduction to the Shat Sandarbhas and also about Srila Jiva Goswami and also about the overview of the Tattva Sandarbha. And then from the next class, we'll begin the Bhagavad Sandarbha from the first Anucheda. So I just kept Krishna Bihari Prabhu as the host. In case if somebody sound gets unmuted, you can actually unmute. You can mute them. And then when we have the time for question answer, we will actually take it.
Okay, Prabhu.
So every human being has got the desire to know. So inquisitiveness is there in every living entity. People want to know about different subject matters. There's this need is fulfilled by so many newspapers, magazines, televisions. So one living entity, especially in the human body, one does not want to be in ignorance. One wants to know things. And in the Sanatan Dharma, Vedas are the source of all knowledge. So Vedas, they completely satisfy the need of the living entity to know different subject matters, because the Vedas, they provide not only spiritual knowledge, but they not only provide material knowledge, but as well as spiritual knowledge. Material knowledge is something which can be perceived with our senses, but a spiritual knowledge which cannot be perceived with our senses. We had discussed previously also the Sanatan Dharma, how there are 18 Vidyasthanams, 18 departments of knowledge. The 4 Vedas, Rik, Yajur, Sam, Atharva, and 6 Vedangas, Shiksha, Chandas, Vyakarana, Nirukta, and Jyotisha and Kalpa Shastra. And then 4 Upangas, Dharma Shastras, Purana Itihasa, Nyaya Shastra, and Mimamsa. These are the 4 Upangas. And there are 4 Upavedas, Dhanurveda, Ayurveda, Gandharva Veda, and Artha Shastra. So these are simply 18 departments of knowledge. And in each department, there are multiple hundreds of categories of books are there. So Vedas, they perfectly satisfy the desire of the living entity to know. So there are 6 schools that accept the Vedic authority: Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, and Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, and Vedanta, and Purva Mimamsa. These are the 6 schools which accept the Vedic authority, and there are other schools which don't accept the Vedic authority, like Jains and Charvak school and the Buddhist school. They don't accept the Vedic authority. So in the Sanatan Dharma, for any sampradaya to be recognized as a bona fide sampradaya, the sampradaya has to establish its siddhanta based on prasthana trayi. Prasthana means a highway or a path. The 3 great highways. What are the 3 great highways? Shruti Prasthana, Smriti Prasthana, and Nyaya Prasthana. These are the 3 great highways for acquiring knowledge. Shruti Prasthana is the Vedas, Smriti Prasthana is the Purana Itihasa, Nyaya Prasthana is the Vedanta Sutra. So traditionally, any sampradaya, in order to establish its siddhanta, Did I start the recording? Okay.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. So in order to establish Siddhanta, they have to write a commentary based on the Upanishads, based on the Vedanta Sutra, and based on Bhagavad Gita. This is the criteria for any for a sampradaya to be recognized. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he so generally we see whether it is Sri Sampradaya, Madhva Sampradaya, Nimbarka Sampradaya, Shankaracharya, Advaita Vedanta Sampradaya. They wrote a commentary on Vedanta Sutra primarily, and of course they will quote from the other Upanishads, will write commentary on Bhagavad Gita. So especially writing a commentary on Vedanta Sutra is very important. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he placed a great emphasis on Srimad Bhagavatam. So therefore, the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, instead of writing commentary on Vedanta Sutra, they chose to write books based on Srimad Bhagavatam. So this traditional opinion was that one has to establish one Siddhanta based on these three: Vedanta Sutra, Upanishads, and Bhagavad Gita. But Vallabhacharya, he introduced, apart from these three Prasthanatrayi, he included for the first time Srimad Bhagavatam. So in his book called Tattvartha Deepa Nibandha, he mentions Veda Shri Krishna Vakyani Vyasa Sutrani Chaivahi Samadhi Bhasha Vyasasya Pramanam Tat Chatushtayam. Pramanam Tat Chatushtayam. He says that there are four Pramanas. Vedas, that means the Shruti Prasthana. Shri Krishna Vakyani, Bhagavad Gita. Vyasa Sutrani, that is Nyaya Vedanta Sutra. These three are the Prasthana Trayi. Before Vallabhacharya, generally one has to write commentary on these three sources of knowledge to establish one Siddhanta. But Vallabhacharya, later after the influence of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he included the fourth one, Samadhi Bhasha Vyasasya. So Samadhi Bhasha Vyasasya, Vyasasya Samadhi Bhasha, it refers to Srimad Bhagavatam. Because Srila Veda Vyasa went into Samadhi and then he wrote Srimad Bhagavatam. So he, along with the Prasthanatrayi, for the first time, Vallabhacharya included the fourth Pramana, specifically Srimad Bhagavatam. But Jiva Goswami went one step further. He went one step further and he said that we don't need even all these four prasthanas. We don't need all these four. We can, all we need is only Srimad Bhagavatam. Here we can depend only on Srimad Bhagavatam to establish one Siddhanta. That is, Jiva Goswami went one step further. It may appear exclusivistic in nature, but that is what Jiva Goswami proves in the Tattva Sandarbha. The Tattva Sandarbha Anucheda 27, he says, so it is that we shall focus our investigation exclusively on Srimad Bhagavatam to determine, free from any inconsistency between preceding and following statements, the ultimate value for human beings. So Jiva Goswami went one step further, that in order to determine the topmost sadhya and the sadhana meant for that, we can focus our investigation only on Srimad Bhagavatam, exclusively on Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is what Jiva Goswami concluded at the end of the Pramana Kanda of the Sri Tattva Sandarbha. So Sandarbha means what? Sandarbha means any literary work that discloses the confidential meaning of a subject or a book, and which incorporates the essence of that book and explains the superiority of the subject and elaborates the various meanings, that is called as a Sandarbha. literally the word Sandarbha means stringing together. Just like when you make a garland, one brings different types of flowers. Tomorrow is Pushpa Abhishek in Sri Radha Gopinath temple. So there is flower dress made of the flowers, flower Abhishek. So when you make garland for the deities, when you make garlands, usually different varieties of flowers are taken. Some 4 or 5 flowers are kept together, and then another variety like that. So similarly, in the Sandarbhas, Jiva Goswami takes he takes certain verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam, and then with those verses he strings together, and he has made this book Shad Sandarbha. He takes different verses. One verse he will take, and then along with that he will take commentaries to that verse, and then related verses from other scriptures, and then make one Anucheda, and then take another verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam for a particular concept, and then quote relevant other pramanas, and then complete that Anucheda. Anucheda means like a paragraph. So in that way, he has actually he has written this book by stringing together the verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam, by taking the verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam and then stringing those verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam and forming this Shad Sandarbha, which is like a garland. So you see, the original name, there are 2 names for it. One is called as Shad Sandarbha and is Bhagavata Sandarbha, because this Shad Sandarbhas are written based on the Srimad Bhagavatam. So therefore, it is called as a Bhagavata Sandarbha. So Bhagavata Sandarbha is an independent essay and elaborate analysis of the subject of the Bhagavata Purana. So in the Bhagavata Sandarbha, there are 6 parts. Out of that, we are going to study the second part, that is called as Bhagavat Sandarbha. So just note the difference between the names. All the 6 parts together, it is called as Bhagavata Sandarbha. But the second part of this book is called as Bhagavat Sandarbha. So we are going to study the Bhagavat Sandarbha because we have completed the first part, Sri Tattva Sandarbha. So in this Bhagavata, in this Shad Sandarbhas, what is Jiva Goswami's unique approach? The novel approach of Jiva Goswami is that, so in the Vedanta Sutra, Sripad Shankaracharya, he wrote a commentary and established the Advaita Siddhanta. And then later Acharyas like Sri Ramanujacharya, Sri Madhvacharya, Sri Nimbarka, in order to refute the Advaita Siddhanta, they wrote commentaries on the Vedanta Sutra, and they refuted the Advaita Siddhanta. They established the absolute truth, having a form and qualities and energies, and then they established their own doctrine. But Jiva Goswami's unique approach is that he, instead of following the method of the other sampradayas by writing a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, Jiva Goswami, he has actually written Shad Sandarbhas to establish the Sandarbha, establish a sampradaya. Devotees can keep themselves muted. So Jiva Goswami's unique approach is that instead of taking the approach of the other acharyas, he first establishes Srimad Bhagavatam as the Chakravarti among the Pramanas. And then after establishing the position of the Srimad Bhagavatam, then using the verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam, by writing the Shad Sandarbha, he has established his sampradaya. He has established. He also does in the course of writing the Shad Sandarbha, he also defeats the Advaita Siddhanta, and then he establishes the Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta. But the unique approach of Jiva Goswami is that instead of using the traditional approach of writing a commentary on Vedanta Sutra, but he establishes the Srimad Bhagavatam as the topmost pramana, and based on Srimad Bhagavatam, he has compiled this Shad Sandarbha. So if we see, just now I was discussing one devotee. A devotee made a very beautiful point. He said, in the one of the uniqueness of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya is that we recognize the contribution of all the acharyas, Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya, Nimbarka Swami, Vishnu Swami. In fact, if you have gone to Mayapur, Chaitanya Gaudiya Math, the Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur established the murtis of the acharyas, and then every day offering is made, puja is done to the acharyas, and in the works of the Jiva Goswami quotes from Ramanujacharya, he quotes from Madhvacharya, he quotes from other sampradayas. While appreciating the other sampradayas, and even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appreciated Sripad Shankaracharya, there is no fault in the acharya, but there is fault in the writings of the acharya. Well, that is also a part of the service of Shankaracharya to the Supreme Lord for propagating the Mayavad philosophy. But Mahaprabhu, he said that there is no fault in Shankaracharya, there is only fault in the writings. So the point is that in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, that while appreciating the other Sampradayas, at the same time, one maintains one's distinct identity. So oftentimes, many times when we talk about Sampradaya is often translated, some people translate as a sect. So the word sect has a very sectarian, narrow-minded viewpoint. But Sampradaya, the meaning of Sampradaya is that it's a combination of Samyak, Prakarshena, Daya. Samyak means completely, Prakarshena, thoroughly. Daya means the act of giving. So the completely and the thoroughly giving knowledge and bestowing knowledge completely and thoroughly. So when that happens, one will never be narrow-minded, one will be actually more broad-minded. But oftentimes when a person is connected to some sampradaya, many times people tend to be narrow-minded. But out of the different sampradayas, we see one of the unique features of Gaudiya Sampradaya is that while recognizing the other sampradayas, at the same time maintaining one's distinct identity. So Jiva Goswami's unique approach is that he established the Siddhanta of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu based on Srimad Bhagavatam after establishing the position of Srimad Bhagavatam. So when we talk about Shad Sandarbhas, so there are 6 Sandarbhas, Tattva Sandarbha. So in the Tattva Sandarbha, briefly speaking, the Tattva Sandarbha first, the Pramana is established, the position of Srimad Bhagavatam, and then the Prameya, what is the subject of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that is spoken in the Tattva Sandarbha. And then in the Bhagavad Sandarbha, so in the Bhagavad Sandarbha, it begins to focus on the actual meaning of the Bhagavatam. So in the Bhagavad Sandarbha, reveals the essence of the Bhagavatam in summary by examining the so the Tattva Sandarbha has got 2 parts, Pramana Kanda and Prameya Kanda. Pramana Kanda, Srimad Bhagavatam is established as a Chakravarti among the Pramanas. The Prameya Kanda, the subject of the Srimad Bhagavatam, is discussed. And then the next 3 Sandarbhas, Bhagavad Sandarbha, Paramatma Sandarbha, and Krishna Sandarbha. In these 3, the Sambandha Tattva is elaborated. In the Bhagavad Sandarbha, the position of Bhagavan as the complete manifestation of the absolute truth. So that is established. How the Bhagavan's abode, his devotees, his ornaments, his paraphernalia, everything is completely spiritual. And the position of the Brahman aspect, Brahma Jyoti aspect, and the Bhagavan aspect. That is clearly established, how the Bhagavan aspect includes the Paramatma and Brahman aspect. So that is established in the second Sandarbha called as Bhagavat Sandarbha. And then in the third Sandarbha, Paramatma Sandarbha, Bhagavan's manifestation as the Paramatma within all living entities. That is described in the Paramatma Sandarbha. And also in the Paramatma Sandarbha, the ontology of the living entities and the illusory potency, Jivatma and Maya, they are also described in the Paramatma Sandarbha. So Paramatma Sandarbha, that is the Jivatma and Maya, that they are also described. And the fourth Sandarbha, Krishna Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami establishes Sri Krishna as a Swayam Bhagavan. And Krishna's abodes, Vrindavan, Mayapur, Vrindavan, Mathura, and Dwaraka, how these abodes are eternal. And Krishna's ever liberated associates, how they are along with them, how Krishna is engaged in the Leela. Especially the fourth Sandarbha, Krishna Sandarbha, is elaboration of Ete Chamsha Kala Pumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, this particular verse. And then in the fifth Sandarbha, the Abhideya Tattva, the process of bhakti, is elaborated in great detail. He talks about how devotional service performed for the pleasure of Krishna without any tinge of any ulterior motive. That is the method to realize one's relationship with the Supreme Lord. He talks about three types of bhakti, and without bhakti, how all the other processes are incomplete. They cannot give the result. And he concludes the Bhakti Sandarbha by saying that the bhakti performed by the residents of Vrindavan, they are the topmost. Bhakti performed by the Gopis and Srimati Radharani are the topmost. That is the Bhakti Sandarbha. And then the sixth Sandarbha, Preeti Sandarbha, he talks about the Prayojana, the ultimate goal. That is the love for Krishna. And so Bhakti Sandarbha, broadly saying that like in a broad Bhakti Sandarbha, we can say it is like something similar to the first part of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Of course, Bhakti Sandarbha is much more detailed. Out of the 6 Sandarbhas, Bhakti Sandarbha is the longest Sandarbha. Just broadly speaking, first part of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. But Preeti Sandarbha, the later 3 parts of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, they are actually elaborated in Preeti Sandarbha, and also the parts of Ujjwala Nilamani also comes in Preeti Sandarbha. So this is a brief outline of the 6 Sandarbhas. So the verses. Okay. Yeah. Now I'll speak a little bit about the eligibility for the reading the Tattva Sandarbha. So every book in the Sanatana Dharma, when a book is written, 4 things are mentioned. Vishaya, subject of the book, it is called as Anubandha Chatushtaya. Anubandha Chatushtaya. One is the subject of the book. Second is the Adhikari for the book, who is the eligibility for the reader. And third is the Prayojana, what one will gain by reading that book, by getting that knowledge. And fourth is the Sambandha, the relationship between the book and the subject. So here, in the beginning of the Tattva Sandarbha, he mentions the qualification for the entire Shad Sandarbha. Yaha Shri Krishna Padam Boja Bhajanai Ka Vilashavan Tenaiva Drishyatam Yetat Anyasmai Shapatorpitaha. this book may be studied only by one whose sole aspiration, bhajana eka abhilashavan, one whose sole aspiration is to worship the lotus feet of Krishna, Sri Krishna Padamboja. All others are forewarned as to the implications of the investigation. Anyasmai shapatorpitaha. So other people, he is actually warning them with a curse, or that others should not read. Actually, this particular verse, by reading this verse, many scholars actually criticized Jiva Goswami. That Jiva Goswami is having a very narrow mindset by saying that it is meant only for those who want to perform bhakti to Krishna. There are many, especially in the academic circles, people actually they criticize Jiva Goswami based on this particular verse. Because based on this verse, one would say that means Jiva Goswami is not open for impartial philosophical investigation. Because many times in the academic circle, they want to do comparative evaluation of the different philosophies. So by reading this verse, one may think that Jiva Goswami is so insecure that he doesn't want to face other opponents. He doesn't want to people with other opinions. He's not open for some impartial philosophical investigation. So generally, any person in the philosophical line, somebody believes in a particular philosophy, but when he deals with the people with opposing philosophies, by having a debate with them, by discussing with them, by that the person also becomes strong. Just like suppose a police officer is there, suppose a big police officer is introduced by somebody, and they would introduce that, oh, this person has an experience of 25 encounters. He had experience of fighting in 3 wars. So that is how a big police officer, army officer would be introduced. So similarly, in the philosophical, this one, when a person has an experience of dealing with people from opposing philosophies, that actually adds to the experience of that person. That adds weightage to the experience of the person. But when we read this particular verse of Jiva Goswami, one may think that Jiva Goswami is so close-minded, he is so insecure, that he is not open for some impartial philosophical investigation. But that is not like that. In fact, Jiva Goswami, when we read the Shat Sandarbhas, he goes into great detail about the whichever subject he discusses. He goes into great detail. He takes all kinds of Purva Paksha and defeats the different Purva Paksha argument. So, suppose so Jiva Goswami's statement should not be interpreted in a dogmatic sense. Dogmatic sense, that means like one must accept a particular philosophy without asking questions. That means blindly accepting a philosophy. So this statement of Jiva Goswami, when he mentions about the adhikari for the book, it should not be interpreted in a dogmatic sense. Rather, this statement is intended to signal to the reader that when you are approaching this particular book, don't approach this book in the attitude of an armchair philosopher. Don't approach this book merely for some intellectual stimulation. So one should not approach this book with the attitude of getting some new information. Rather, one must approach this book with the mood of devotion. One must offer one's entire existence. One must approach this in the mood of submission to the Supreme. Then, when a person approaches that book with that mood, then the book will reveal the knowledge to oneself. So that is what Jiva Goswami is talking about. The very approach of this book itself should be in the mode of submission, because this statement specifies that the truth to be self-disclosed through submission of consciousness to the investigation is Bhagavan. So it should be approached in the mood of submission. So therefore, even the beginning of inquiry is based upon a prior devotional turning of one's consciousness towards the Bhagavan. So that the process of inquiry itself becomes non-different in function and essence from the completely realized state. So when we are approaching this book, we are approaching in the mood of inquiry, but even that mood of inquiry should itself be in the mood of submission. That is what Jiva Goswami is actually telling here. But it is not that Jiva Goswami is insecure that he doesn't want to face opposing opinions. Rather, when we read the Shad Sandarbhas, for example, when we read the Paramatma Sandarbha and all, like there are all the different opinions about the Jiva Tattva from the various schools of that, all are defeated. He is not insecure about the other philosophies. Rather, he defeats all of them thoroughly. But still, this is the method, this is the adhikar, this is the eligibility he is actually demanding. So therefore, the reader is alerted that this book is not simply to be read from a detached or a non-participatory sense, like especially in the scientific field, the academic field. They approach a book in an objective way. They approach a book more in an objective way. So they don't approach in a subjective way. So when they especially, like there is once His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj was discussing with some Christian professor in one university, and he had a long discussion for many years, many hours, and then somehow that Christian professor could not defeat Maharaj. And then after a few days, he told that actually I don't believe, although I'm teaching Christianity, I have written so many books, I don't believe in whatever I have written. Then Maharaj asked that, then if you don't believe in whatever you have written, then why do you teach? Why have you written so many books? And he said that is my greatness, that although I teach these subjects, although I have written many books, but I am not affected by the subject. I see those subjects only in an objective way. It does not in a subjective way. But so that is the method of many times the dry academic scholars and the scientific circle, they approach in an objective way. But Jiva Goswami is saying that don't approach this book in an objective way, in a detached manner. Rather, one should approach this book by submitting one consciousness to the source of everyone. That is why he says that Shri Krishna, Yaha Shri Krishna Padamboja Bhajanai Kabilashavan. This book may be studied only by one whose sole aspiration is to worship the lotus feet of Krishna. One whose primary aspiration is to worship the lotus feet of Krishna. That is why I mentioned the eligibility for the course taken from this particular verse. And we have similar verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita about the eligibility for the book. Krishna says that idam te natapaskaya nabhaktaya kadachana nacha asusrushave vachyam nachamam yogya suyati. Bhagavatam also paramo nirmatsaranam satam. Shukdev Goswami mentions. And another point is that sometimes some people may approach the book in a dry argumentative manner, more in an intellectual exercise, and may approach the book. And there may be other books, there may be other people who may think that they are already surrendered, who may presume themselves to be already surrendered, but still they maintain certain egoic self-interest. Such people may also approach the book. So they may think that they are already surrendered, and although internally they may have a mood of, they may not have a primary aspiration to serve Krishna. So even such people are also warned by Jiva Goswami. And especially it is said one should not approach this book with the desire to gain some, say, profit, adoration, or distinction, either by teaching or by reading. So therefore, this adhikari is mentioned by Jiva Goswami here, and some points like similar statements in the Bhagavatam. So Jiva Goswami is not interested in polemics for their own sake. He is not interested in arguing with some dry, argumentative people. He is interested in people like who are the prime aspiration to progress in bhakti. And he is not unkind. By making this statement, it is not that he is unkind towards other people, but rather he is exhibiting his sincere concern. Because when somebody does not have the prime aspiration to serve Krishna, when he reads this book, he may commit more offenses. Or when especially when a person has an envious nature, one may commit more offenses. So therefore, out of sincere concern, he is making this statement, not out of unkindness. And even when Jiva Goswami is saying that I curse those people who don't have this qualification when they approach this book, I curse those people. One may think, how can a Vaishnava curse? But even a curse of a Vaishnava, it only benefits the offender in unforeseen ways, just like Narada Muni is cursing Nalakwar and Manigiri. But of course, one cannot imitate Vaishnava cursing. Only those who are advanced in devotional humility can curse others. And so then one may say that, okay, I'm not sure whether I have a primary aspiration to serve Krishna. Even if we don't have primary aspiration to serve Krishna, we can aspire to have the primary aspiration to serve Krishna. So one may think that then if it is mainly meant for the devotees, how can we publish this book and keep it for sale for anybody? So because the Acharyas wanted, Srila Prabhupada wanted, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur told Prabhupada to publish the great works of the standard Vaishnava Acharyas is the most effective way to increase God consciousness in this confused age. So, although Jiva Goswami has mentioned this, but even suppose if a person is in an offenseless manner, even if a person approaches this book, just like in the Bhagavatam, today also morning, Balram Shakti Prabhu was mentioning Vishnu Chakravarti's commentary. When a person approaches the Bhagavatam, when a person approaches the 5 most important limbs of bhakti, even without having faith, if a person approaches them, these 5 most important links can elevate a person to the stage of bhava, provided a person is offenseless, provided a person is innocent. So therefore, in that way, these books are helpful even for the common people. So, and to give a philosophical foundation for the Sankirtan movement, the Acharyas wanted these books to be published. And sometimes the Acharyas, they may take a risk of speaking the highest philosophy, even at the risk of committing the 9th offense. Prabhupada writes in that 18th chapter Bhagavad Gita that idam te natapaskaya in the next verse. So Acharyas are sometimes more merciful than the Lord. So sometimes a devotee, when they are holding open class, even those who are not devotees but not envious will attain the result of righteous activities by hearing Gita, Bhagavatam. So therefore, one must approach the book with the respect for the author and for the authorities he cites. So therefore, Jiva Goswami's arguments are reasonable, consistent, and illuminating. When we read the Sandarbhas, we will find that his arguments are very reasonable, consistent, and illuminating everyone. So, Sri Krishna Bhajana Eka Abhilashavan, that means one whose main desire is to worship the lotus feet of Krishna and not whose only desire is to worship Krishna. Yeah, one may have other desires, but one whose main desire is to worship the lotus feet of Krishna, that is his primary goal. Yeah, sometimes a person may have other desires to excel something in his studies or in his job or something. But they are all subservient to the main desire of worshipping the lotus feet of Krishna. So Jiva Goswami is making this statement not out of fear, but out of compassion for the common people and for the benefit of the common people, so that they don't commit offenses. And Eka also means that one should not misuse this book for profit, adoration, and distinction. These are some of the points. So the word Sri Krishna Bhajanaika Abhilashavan, the prime aspiration, that means one must turn one's consciousness to the Supreme Lord. One must turn one's whole body to the Supreme Lord. That includes the physical body, Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha. So all these things should be turned towards the Bhagavan and worship. So essentially, when a person is worshipping the Bhagavan, if it is not superficial, if it is not just superficial, it's an act of consciousness in which a devotional turning of consciousness. Yet for it to be complete, it should involve and translate into all aspects of individual selfhood, and hence it should be whole-bodied worship. So whole-bodied worship of the Supreme Lord means involving all the faculties, so your thoughts, your senses, your body, and your intellectual faculties, everything in the service of the Lord. That is why Sri Krishna Bhajana Eka Abhilashavan. Another meaning of this is that having the attitude of a whole-bodied worship, that means turning one's all the faculties towards the worship of the Supreme Lord Krishna. So in this particular, in fact, when Jiva Goswami is mentioning the Adhikari for the book, here itself he is indirectly mentioning the purpose of Shad Sandarbha. The purpose of Shad Sandarbha is to establish service to Krishna as the supreme goal of life. That is indirectly mentioned here. So now we will speak something about Jiva Goswami, because it is important to know the author of the book, his contributions. So in the, I was hearing in Hari Parshad Prabhu's class. So he said in the Sanatan Dharma, somebody who teaches to 1,000 students, he is called as a Upadhyaya. Somebody who has taught to 1,000 students. Somebody who has taught to 10,000 students, he is called as a Maha Upadhyaya. And somebody who taught to 1,00,000 students, he is called as a Maha Upadhyaya. And based on this definition, Jiva Goswami can be called as a Maha Upadhyaya. One may wonder, what is the proof that he taught to 1,00,000 students? The proof is that actually all the devotees in the Gaudiya Math or the ISKCON, the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, they all became devotees through the writings of Jiva Goswami. Prabhupada, throughout his purports, all the purports he has written, those purports are all based on the writings of Jiva Goswami and the other Goswamis. So in that sense, Jiva Goswami's writings through the later acharyas, that has made all these devotees, because the books are the basis of the Krishna consciousness movement. And based on these books, so many people became devotees. And the basis of these books is that the literature is written by the acharyas like Jiva Goswami. In that sense, he has definitely taught more than 1,00,000 devotees. Therefore, he is called as a Maha Upadhyaya. And what is the role of Jiva Goswami in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya? When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Varanasi, some of the sannyasis over there, they told Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that you have taken sannyas from the Shankara Sampradaya, but instead of studying Vedanta Sutra, why are you chanting and dancing like sentimental person. You are actually spoiling the name of our Sampradaya. So at that time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they felt that somebody you are supposed to be studying the Vedanta Sutra and the Upanishads, and you should not be behaving like a sentimental person. You cannot even, Sarvam Bhattacharya told that you are a young sannyasi. How will you be able to maintain sannyas if you don't know the Vedanta Sutra? So therefore, I will teach you the Vedanta Sutra. And then out of concern for Mahaprabhu, he started teaching Vedanta Sutra. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of course, out of devotional mood, he told Prakashanand Saraswati that my spiritual master told that I am a fool. I don't need to study Vedanta Sutra. He told me to simply chant these holy names. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also attracted Prakashanand Saraswati by his humility and by his beauty, and then later he spoke the philosophy. He also spoke Vedanta Sutra to Prakashanand Saraswati. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's character, there is a godbrother of Srila Prabhupada called as O.B.L. Kapoor. In his book on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he has written that the intensely devotional character of the personality of Sri Chaitanya has eclipsed his philosophy. His place has been among the devotees and the mystics rather than among the philosophers. But the devotional side of his personality itself suggests a corresponding philosophical side of his nature. A definite and a perfect sense of reality which must account for the particular way in which his heart and soul reacted to it. So it is a mistake to suppose that the predominance of emotions in the life of a devotee renders him incapable of serious philosophical thinking. On the contrary, his understanding is so developed and purified that his grasp of things is more intuitive than ratiocinative, and his knowledge of reality is more intimate and complete. So people considered Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a saint, and many people considered that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had a disease of epilepsy. Because of that, he was dancing like that. So many people, they don't consider Chaitanya Mahaprabhu among the philosophers. But actually the fact is that the result of the cause for his devotional emotions is that the philosophical side. But the philosophical side is eclipsed by his devotional side, because we see him, people were seeing him all the time chanting and dancing, and he did not write any books. He wrote only 8 verses. So because of that, his philosophical side was eclipsed by his devotional side. So whatever the same criticism which came to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu 500 years back, the same criticism comes even generations later, when people saw that the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, they are simply into chanting and dancing. So Jiva Goswami's contribution is that he gave philosophical foundation to the Sampradaya. In another place, O.B.L. Kapoor writes, whether we judge the intensity of a devotee's love for God by the frantic outbursts of emotion that reveal the inner working of his heart, whether we measure Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by the range and depth of his spiritual realization and the height of bliss perpetually experienced by him, or whether we apply to him the test of shaping the minds and molding the lives of his associates and followers by the magnetic influence of his personality. These are the different ways by which you can actually judge the position of a spiritual leader or a saint. One is by seeing one's intense love for Krishna. Another is by seeing one's depth of spiritual realization And another is how much he has actually trained the next generation, his followers, how he has trained the next generation of the followers to create a legacy. These are the different criteria by which we can actually judge a saintly person as a spiritual leader. So when you judge Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by any of these criteria, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stands out as the brightest luminary of divine love on the spiritual firmament of the world. Because if you see Mahaprabhu's spiritual emotions, nobody in the history of creation, nobody has exhibited such devotional emotions like Mahaprabhu. And nobody has exhibited such a deep spiritual realization. He spoke, he gave 18 different meanings of the Atma Rama versus Sarvam Bhattacharya. He explained 61 different ways, 61 different meanings of the Atma Rama versus Sanatan Goswami. Such a deep spiritual realization, his teachings of Sanatan Siksha, Rupa Siksha. And when we see the quality of his followers, the 6 Goswamis, Haridas Thakur, Ramananda Rai, when we judge by the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by all these criteria, Mahaprabhu stands out as the brightest luminary. His bountiful distribution of the nectar of divine love to the rich and the poor, Patra, Apatra, Nadeki, Sthana, Sthana, the young and the old. When Mahaprabhu, after he took sannyas, when he was roaming in Ekachakra, some ordinary cowherd boys, by seeing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's kirtan, they chanted Haribol. At that time, Mahaprabhu felt that, oh, my taking to sannyas has become successful because I am able to induce this cowherd boy, this boys to chant the names of Krishna. And the same Mahaprabhu, when he saw the transformation of Sarvam Bhattacharya, who was the greatest scholar of was the greatest scholar at that time, and when Sarvam Bhattacharya took the Mahaprasad immediately without even taking bath or without doing the morning duties, Mahaprabhu felt that now today I have conquered the Meru Parvata. So Mahaprabhu transformed the ordinary cowherd boy, induced them to chant, at the same time greatest scholar like Sarvam Bhattacharya. Young and the old, the good and the wicked, he transformed people like Jagai and Madai, regardless of any barriers of caste and creed. So his congregational chantings of the name of the Lord, in which lakhs and lakhs of men joined at a time, his trains of love over his enemies, and the chastening effect of the mere touch and the presence of his personality, which turned the kings and the chiefs into ascetics. Prataparudra Maharaj, when he heard that Mahaprabhu is going to South India, he felt that what is the use of my kingdom if Mahaprabhu is going to leave my kingdom? Ramananda Rai, he renounced because of Mahaprabhu's mercies, Sanatan Goswami, Rupa Goswami, and which turned the kings and the chiefs into the ascetics and the cruelest and the most hardened of sinners into saints, and made even the fiercest of animals dance with the joy of divine love, are all unparalleled in history. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the brightest luminary of pure love. So another beautiful Prabhupada disciple, he writes that, so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is like a great waterfall of love of God. A great waterfall of love of God. But when a waterfall is falling, if you have gone to waterfall, you can't, it is difficult to hold on to there, like people many times stand at a distance. But what Jiva Goswami has done by writing the Shad Sandarbha is that he has made that waterfall of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's love of God into a small lake, into a lake, and that lake is called a Shad Sandarbha. So that the common people can drink the water from the lake. It is easy to drink from the water from the lake than to drink the water from the waterfall. And So Jiva Goswami has made this lake of Shad Sandarbha from the waterfall of love of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so people can drink the water and they can swim in the water, and while swimming in this water, they can forget themselves. What is this water? This water is the love of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that is what the Shad Sandarbha is, nothing but the lake of the waterfall of love of God exhibited by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So some more points, then will end. So Jiva Goswami, when we see his personality, there are many different roles of Jiva Goswami. So one is that as a scholar, he wrote so many books. We will see his contribution to Jiva Goswami. As a scholar, he wrote so many books. And not only that, when he was present, he was considered as a leader of the Vaishnavas in the Vrindavan. He also played the role of a leader. And he also taught many people. Narottam Das Thakur, Shyamananda Pandit, and Srinivasa Acharya, they were all taught by Jiva Goswami. Oftentimes, even we see sometimes there are people who write many books, but they may not teach, they are not into teaching. Even when they give classes, they will give very brief class. We'll see, like Banu Maharaj has translated more than 105 books, but his classes are very short actually. And there are others who mainly like to speak, but they don't write books, like Velapudi Krishnan in the South India. He gives so many classes, but he's not into writing. But it's very rare to find a combination, one who is a teacher as well as a scholar writing books. And Jiva Goswami also played a managerial role because he managed the properties of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, excavated many places, he established the Radha Kunda, he wrote will for those properties. In that way, he played multiple roles as a leader, teacher, scholar, manager. And Jiva Goswami's books, some places it is mentioned here, written 25 books. And these 25 books can be classified into 4 categories. Some books are commentaries written on, like he wrote a commentary on Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Durgama Sangamani Tika. He wrote a commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, verse by verse commentary, that is called as Krama Sandarbha. He wrote commentary on Brahma Samhita. And some books are commentaries. And some books are philosophical works, like Shad Sandarbha. Shad Sandarbha is a philosophical work. Using the verses of the Bhagavatam, he has written this book. And some books are literary works, like Gopal Champu. Gopal Champu. Gopal Champu is the pastimes of Krishna. Champu is a combination of Gadya and Padya, prose and poetry. There are also, I think, other books, literary works, which literary works means like a kavya. And then there are some books called as manuals. Krishna Janma Titi Vidhi, how to celebrate Krishna Janmashtami. And then Hari Namamrita Vyakarana. He wrote a new system of Vyakarana, Hari Namamrita. And then he wrote how to write Champu literature. He wrote a manual on that. So usually, even to write, you will find people in the Sanatana Dharma, usually people write books on one of the categories, and that too few books. But it's practically very rare to find people writing books on all these different categories. So that is Jiva Goswami's like unique, great scholarship actually. So like one particular point about the Hari Namamrita Vyakarana. Bhartrhari, in his Bhartrhari is one of the great Sanskrit grammarian, and he also wrote other books like Niti Shatakam, Shringara Shatakam, Vairagya Shatakam. So Bhartrhari, he wrote about the Sanskrit grammar. He said that Tapasanam Uttamam Tapaha. Out of all the tapasyas, the greatest tapasya is to study the Sanskrit grammar. He was referring to Panini Vyakaran, Sanskrit grammar. Sanskrit grammar. Like, of course, there are different systems of Vyakaran even before Panini. So studying Vyakarana is a great tapasya actually. And but the beauty of Jiva Goswami's Vyakaran, what is the speciality of Jiva Goswami's Vyakaran is that in the Panini Vyakaran, generally for Vyakaran, there is one important principle is that Ardhamatra Lagavena Putrotsavam Manyante. So in the Vyakaran Sutras, if a person can reduce even one matra in a sutra, one letter in a sutra, one matra in a sutra, the sutrakara, the composer of the sutra experiences happiness as if a child is born. You know, as parents, when a child is born, how much the parents are happy. That is the happiness a person experiences when a composer of a sutra is able to reduce even one matra, ardha matra, when a person is able to reduce even half a matra, ardha matra lagavena putrotsavam manyante. But in Harinamamrita Vyakarana, Jiva Goswami did not give regard to this particular rule. Because Harinamamrita Vyakarana, all the Vyakarana rules are composed with the holy names of Krishna. In the holy names of Krishna, we want to chant more and more. We don't want to chant less and less. So therefore, he did not give regard to this particular very core rule of the Vyakarana, all the Vyakarana Sutrakars. They want to write the sutras as briefly as possible without losing the essence. But Jiva Goswami, because he composed the Vyakaran using holy names of Krishna, he did not give regard to this rule. So lastly, we will read the Mangalacharan for the Bhagavad Sandarbha. With that, we will end the class. So in the for the Bhagavad Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami has written two Mangalacharan. Tau Santoshayata Shantanu Srila Rupa Sanatanau Dakshinatyena Bhattena Punaretad Vivichyate. So Srila Rupa Sanatanau Santoshayata Santo, for the two saints Rupa and Sanatana, for their pleasure, Dakshinatyena Bhattena Punaretad Vivichyate. Dakshinatyena Bhattena, it refers to Gopala Bhatta Goswami, who is from South India. So Gopala Bhatta Goswami originally wrote the book, but that book is again compiled or rearranged by Jiva Goswami. And of course, there are many original contributions of Jiva Goswami. Gopi Parandan Prabhu, he writes that he did not simply rearrange, but he included many portions. So Jiva Goswami is saying that for the pleasure of Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, I am rearranging the book compiled by Gopala Bhatta Goswami, who was born in South India. And then the next Mangalacharan, he says, Tasyadyam Grantana Lekam Krantam Utkranta Kanditam Pariya Lochyata Pariyayam Kritva Likati Jivakaha. So he says some parts of this book written by Gopala Bhatta Goswami were in order. Some were not out of order, while others were incomplete or missing. And after thorough deliberation, Pariya Lochyata Pariyayam Kritva, after thorough deliberation, Jiva now writes it in the appropriate order. So there is a saying that Jivo Jivasya Jivanam, one living entity is the food for another living entity. But the same sentence for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, it has another meaning. Jivo Jivasya Jivanam. For all the Jivas, for all the devotees in Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, or for all the living entities, the works written by Jiva Goswami, Jivasya refers to the works of Jiva Goswami. Jivo Jivasya Jivanam. The works of Jiva Goswami are the life-giving tonic. Jivanam refers to that, like a Sanjeevani herb or a life-giving tonic. The works of Jiva Goswami are like a life-giving tonic for all the living entities. So just briefly, what I will explain in the Tattva Sandarbha, what we discussed, I will just briefly explain in a few minutes. So and then we will start the Bhagavad Sandarbha next class. The Tattva Sandarbha has got two parts, Pramana Kanda and Prameya Kanda. So there are 63 Anuchedas in the Tattva Sandarbha. So out of that, the first 8 Anuchedas, because some people might have joined without going to the Tattva Sandarbha, so therefore just for the sake of summary, I'll mention Tattva Sandarbha. The first 8 Anuchedas are the Tattva Sandarbha. Jiva Goswami wrote the Mangalacharan. He offered obeisances to his Guru Varga, to the Ishta Devata. And then he also explained why he is writing the book, and he defined the subject of the book and the eligibility for the readers. That is what he did in the first 8 Anuchedas. And then in Anucheda 9 to 18, Jiva Goswami discusses Vedic epistemology. He is doing that in order to determine the means of valid knowing by which the Sambandha, Abhidheya and Prayojana can be definitely determined. He starting from the different pramanas, Pratyaksha, Anumana and Shabda Pramana. And then out of the 3, he accepts the Shabda Pramana for knowing the absolute truth, for who is beyond our senses. And then in the Shabda Pramana, he accepts the Vedas. And then he talks about what are the difficulties of studying the Vedas in the current time. And then he establishes the Vedic authority of the Puranas and Itihasas. And then in the gradual process from Anucheda 9 to 18, finally he establishes the position of Srimad Bhagavatam as the Chakravarti among the Pramanas. So he establishes Srimad Bhagavatam is the most suitable Purana for investigation. It is completely available. It is a natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. It is a commentary on the Gayatri Mantra. It contains the essential message of the Mahabharata. And in that way, he quoted the verse from Garuda Puran, and then he established the Srimad Bhagavatam as the most suitable Purana for investigation. And then in the Anucheda 19 to 26, he explains the supreme qualities of Srimad Bhagavatam, how it is a Chakravarti Pramana, by quoting various evidences from other Puranas, and how it is a ripened fruit of the tree of the Vedic knowledge. He established this from 19 to 26. And then in Anucheda 27 and 28, he spoke about the basic scheme of the Sandarbhas, how he is going to write the Sandarbhas, what sources he plans to refer, and his method of analysis he mentions in two Anuchedas. And then in Anucheda 29, so till the Anucheda 28, the Pramana Kanda ends. First 8 are Mangalacharan, and then Anucheda 28, Pramana Kanda ends. And from 29th Anucheda, Prameya Kanda starts. The 29th Anucheda, he analyzes the transformation of the consciousness of Shukadeva Goswami, how he transformed from being an impersonalist to a personalist. And from that, he establishes the subject of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then from Anucheda 30 to 49, he analyzes the Samadhi of Veda Vyasa described in 1st canto 7th chapter. So we had discussed that during the Tattva Sandarbha in detail. Based on the Samadhi of Veda Vyasa, he analyzes the Sambandha, Abhidheya and Prayojana described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So while analyzing the Samadhi of Veda Vyasa in Anucheda 34 to 43, he also in the process, he refuted the two of the most prominent Advaitavada doctrine, that is Paramarthikavada and Pratibimbavada. In great detail, he refuted them. So then, so till the 49th Anucheda, he discussed the Samadhi of Veda Vyasa in great detail. And then in the last section, 50 to 63, that is divided into two sections, 50 to 55 and 56 to 63. In Anucheda 50 to 55, from Vyashti point of view, he discusses the subject of the Srimad Bhagavatam. From Vyashti point of view, he discusses the nature of the supreme absolute truth. Vyashti means what? Vyashti means microcosmic point of view. That means you take analyze by understanding the nature of one drop of water. You try to study the entire ocean water. Or by taking one small blood sample, one tries to study what is the nature of the blood in a person's body. So similarly, in Vyashti point of view, by studying the nature of the individual living entity and studying his qualities, you try to understand the nature of the supreme person, because the individual living entity is the part and parcel of the supreme person. So Vyashti point of view discusses the nature of the absolute truth in 50 to 55. And then the last section, 56 to 63, from Samashti point of view, from macrocosmic point of view, he analyzes the nature of the absolute truth. So in this section, this is divided into two parts, 56 to 60 and 61 to 63. So 56 to 60, he discusses the 10 topics of the Srimad Bhagavatam from the second canto, 10th chapter. So the how the purpose of in the 10 topics, the purpose of the first 9 topics is to focus on the 10th topic. Dashamasya Vishuddhyartham Navana Miha Lakshanam Varnayanti Mahatman Shrutenartena Chanjasa. So he discusses the 10 topics of the Bhagavatam spoken by Shukdev Goswami in the second canto. And then the last section, 61 to 63, he discusses the 10 topics of the Bhagavatam spoken by Suta Goswami in the 12th canto in a slightly different way, but he reconciles both the explanation of the Shukdev Goswami and the Suta Goswami. So the 10 topics of the Bhagavatam are discussed. And so from the Samashti point of view, the Supreme Lord, Supreme Absolute Truth is established. This is the summary of the Tattva Sandarbha. So next week we will start from the first Anucheta of the Bhagavad Sandarbha. So I'll stop here. If anybody has any questions or comments, we'll take them. So I thank you everyone for your patient hearing of this class.
Prabhuji, you were explaining the Jiva Goswami's the point of explaining in a different way. I'm not able to put it correctly, but my question is, at one point you said there are one must have desires, and the major desire should be the Supreme Lord. So my question is that Anya Abhilashita Sunyam, that point, does it covers the this point? This that we should have also many desires. Along with the desires, we should have the major desire of fulfilling Krishna's wish. So that does it fulfill that? Does it fulfill that Anya Abhilashita?
Yeah, in the sense, so Yaha Shri Krishna Bhajanaika Abhilashavan, one whose prime desire or main desire is to worship Krishna. It does not mean that one whose only desire is to worship Krishna. Yeah, somebody may have other desires, but if it is aligned with that main desire, suppose if that other desires are not aligned with that main desire, then one has other desires. It does not satisfy Anya Bilashita Shunyam. But if the other desires are aligned with that main desire, that is what Jiva Goswami is pointing out here.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, Shri Vallabhacharya accepted the Srimad Bhagavatam as praman, right? You mentioned. So, but he rejected. If I don't know if I'm saying the right fact, but did he reject Sridhar Swami's commentaries?
No, the Chaitanya Charitamrita in the there's a conversation between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Vallabhacharya. He he said that I have written a commentary in which I have written some better explanation like Sridhar Swami, like that he mentioned. Not remembering the exact words, but Mahaprabhu said that one who rejects Sridhar Swami, he did not appreciate that, he chastised that, therefore he neglected Vallabhacharya. But actually Sridhar Swami, but later Vallabhacharya learned from that lesson. So therefore we see Sridhar Swami's commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam, that is accepted by all the Sampradayas. All the Vaishnava Sampradayas, Advaita Sampradaya, Sridhar Swami's commentary. So at that point, when he met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he told that he has written something which is better than Sridhar Swami. Like that, he was speaking to Mahaprabhu. But Mahaprabhu did not appreciate that. He said, one who does not accept Swami is like a prostitute, like that he mentioned. And later, Vallabhacharya learned from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu how he corrected his pride. But so Sridhar Swami's commentary is accepted by everyone, including Vallabhacharya, all the Sampradayas.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Anybody else has any other points? Okay, there are no more points, so we'll stop here. So next week we'll again meet at 8 o'clock. So thank you very much for your patient hearing.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Dandat pranam.